I intend in this paper to look at the different areas in which social integration can be promoted, and also the manner in which institutions such as the KDU can contribute. I do this because it's clear that reconciliation requires much better social integration than we have. And secondly, while those who, in my view, do not have Sri Lanka's better interests at heart criticize additional responsibilities being entrusted to military personnel, I have no doubt that better and more systematic use of the capabilities the military has evinced in the last several years will certainly contribute to better integration. Unquestioned even by the hostile is the need for greater minority participation in the armed forces and the police. It has been argued that the minorities were deliberately excluded from the forces, but this was not the case, except immediately after the abortive coup of 1962, when there were suspicions not against the minorities, but in fact against Sinhalese Christians, who didn't fit into your paradigm, Sunil. Tamils and Muslims continued to be recruited, and Christians too in smaller numbers. But in the 90s, the situation changed, more because the LTT discouraged applications, though it is true that following the desertion of a Tamil army officer, the military was more cautious about recruiting Tamils. But those who were in service continued to be deployed in vital positions, though not ones that exposed them to LTT violence. I have worked myself with 2 Tamil officers in senior positions in the military academy, and that is obviously considered a plum appointment, given the other distinguished personnel, such as the Vice-Chancellor and the Commander and the Chief of Staff of the Army now, who were there when our university ran the academic component of the degree program. I should add that during the height of the war, the Secretary of Defense instituted a scheme to recruit officers from minority communities to the Cadet Corps to serve as English teachers. But after just one intake, the Minister of Education managed to kill this initiative. This is, I'm afraid, an occupational hazard where the Ministry of Education is concerned. But the failure to press for its continuation suggests a lack of understanding of how such initiatives can contribute to social integration. I hope that now there will be active encouragement for Tamil as well as Muslim youngsters to join the forces at all levels, and in particular as officer cadets. For this purpose, we should establish Cadet Corps in schools in the north and east. And though this has begun, I hope the forces at least will not fall prey to the classic Sri Lankan fault of too little, too late. With regard to the police, the doors were always open, but sadly the toll the LTT took of Tamil policemen and active discouragement and threats meant that few joined. Following the successful intake at the Kalladi Training School in 2008, there were not enough applications for a second such course. Negative elements claimed this was because the police discriminated, but following elimination of the LTT, large numbers applied. Following these post-war intakes, the number of Tamil policemen in the north has increased by leaps and bounds, but we need more. The aim should be that not only there, but all over the country, complaints can be recorded in Tamil and evidence led in court in Tamil when needed. This relates to the second area in which we need to fast forward social integration, namely through a proactive trilingual policy, as was explained. Though we cannot expect everyone to know 3 languages, we must ensure that all those in school now know at least 2, and we must provide mechanisms where opportunities to gain at least speaking competence in a second will be readily available to adults. Government officials, following the seminal reforms introduced by Minister D.W. Gunasekara, are required to achieve competence in the second official language to be eligible for promotion. But whether the regulations promulgated by the minister will lead to the desired results remain to be seen. Government must clearly make this a priority and provide better language learning mechanisms. This is not difficult to achieve, as I noticed in the north in observing how Sinhala and Tamil policemen working together had begun to learn each other's languages. This concept, that of peer learning, should be developed more widely, because I gather from not only officials but civil society in the form of rural development societies at reconciliation committees in divisional secretariats that there is a great desire to learn Sinhala. The complaint is that there are not enough teachers, but instead of waiting for the Ministry of Education to provide such teachers and enough Tamil teachers for second language learning in the south, we should develop conversational classes through volunteer facilitators. The police now deployed in the north could easily contribute to this, but they should also show themselves willing to learn Tamil so that a symbiotic relationship could develop. Military personnel could also contribute to such initiatives, but there is a more powerful manner in which they could take the process forward. I refer to the development of formal qualifications, certificates and diplomas and degrees, which, as you know, Sri Lankans need if they are to learn anything, based on a modular approach that enables youngers moment of training facilities in the north for the higher level construction work, plumbing, wiring, and in addition to carpentry and bricklaying. And at the moment, there are long bus journeys that people have to travel on if they are to get the requisite qualifications. These are an area the military can step into very easily. Because integration occurs most readily when people work together or learn together, and if both tasks can be combined, so much the better. I hope the KDU, since I think no other educational institute will undertake the task, should develop vocational courses that will also allow other service providers to train, while also setting up centers under civilian management that will provide not only training but work experience. The superb housing program that the military has commenced in the north, second in size only to the Indian effort, and moving much more quickly because of fewer bureaucratic constraints, can be expanded to include training and certification for the resettled. They could thus work side by side with military personnel in providing housing, both through funded projects and for those who have earned enough to expand the basic shelters with which they were provided. And one of the reasons to include soft skills in such training programs is to enhance employability in other contexts too. I noticed this in a center run by something called Aided Action in Vaunia, where the students were actually enjoying themselves, a far cry from the almost deserted vocational training centers I had seen elsewhere in the north, with students looking as bored as the staff. With Aided Action, self-expression was encouraged through cultural and social services activity, and their readiness to bring together the students in their various centers from all over the country, something that Professor Disanayak also suggested, the cultural synthesis, is an essential part of training. The result is that their products could be employed elsewhere. And another reason for suggesting a menu of courses is that we must also provide opportunities for those deprived of higher learning through no fault of their own to resume making their way up an educational ladder. The type of certificate I envisage would allow those who did not have ordinary level qualifications to catch up on this. And this is very essential in the north. A very sensitive police officer in Mullaitivu told me that most applicants for laboring jobs with the police did not have the ordinary level certificate required, but a few had advanced level qualifications which suited them for higher positions. That gap is not uncommon, since the LTT, while allowing a chosen few to go on to higher studies, prevented many from getting even basic qualifications. We should therefore facilitate their catching up, but practically not to making them go through the whole gamut of O-level courses. For this purpose, I think the military will be able to provide streamlined courses, and some will be able to go on to advanced level and diplomas and degrees, because we need to get rid of the still rigid divide between academic courses and technical training based on a British model of exclusivity with regard to tertiary education that the British have long abandoned. And this reminds me of the fact that when Sabragama was asked to run a degree course for the military, many of my colleagues said, what nonsense, how can we give degrees to people who are simply doing a profession? Well, I have to say that some in the military said, why on earth should we ask for degrees and turn our good soldiers into lazy idiots? I think we managed a decent synthesis. I'm happy that even some officers who disapproved of the degree course in 2001 told me in 2008 that they found the products of the degree course extremely well motivated. Because in the modern world, you need everything. You can't have these rigid divides. Since the vocational university has been slow to work on this principle, I think the KDU should take the lead, and this will contribute to social integration in the rest of society too, not only in areas affected directly by the conflict. The need